evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book about Hungary. Now this series, if you've watched my channel before, is a pretty outdated book series. It's from, let me see actually, I think it's like 2003, 2002. So the information is pretty old, as you can imagine. So we're going to read the closer look at Hungary section, which is mostly about history and culture. So tonight we're going to learn about our pod's journey, Budapest, coffee houses, the Cowboys of Puszta, the crown of Stephen I, Chardash, the national dance, the Danube, Esterhazy, Hungarian royalty, the Festival of Mohach, freedom fighters, Hungarian physicists, Hungarian porcelain, the tragedy of Trianon, waters that heal, and wines of Hungary. So let's just dive right in. And a note, as you can tell by that, my pronunciation is pretty rough of Hungarian. It's a very notoriously difficult language, so I've done my best, and I'm doing my best, basically. So if I mispronounce anything and you actually know how to pronounce it, just leave it down in the comment, and I'll like pin it or something so that everyone will know how to say it correctly. But again, I'm doing my best. So we are starting off with our pod's journey, mysterious beginnings. The arrival and subsequent settlement of the Magyar tribes in the eastern part of Hungary in the late 9th century may have established the first borders of the country. Many facts about these early migrants, however, continue to be shrouded in uncertainty. For example, the reason for their radical change in lifestyle from hunter-gatherers to nomadic herdsmen is a topic still widely debated today. Historians are equally undecided about how the Magyars' original native language developed into modern Hungarian, which is unique not only in Europe but also in the world. Experts in the past and in the field today have labored to find the missing pieces to this European puzzle. Proposed by language experts, the most popular theory states that the similarities between the Magyar language and the Finno-Ugric languages indicate relations between the Magyars and other Finno-Ugrian peoples. I don't know why I'm stumbling over that. Such as Finns, Estonians, Ostiaks, and Vogels. This theory suggests that the ancient homeland of the Magyar people must be situated near the Ural Mountains in Russia, as is the case with other Finno-Ugrian peoples. Nailed it. Experts believe the Finns then broke away to settle near the Baltic Sea around 2000 BCE. The Magyars remained with other Ugrian peoples. Maybe it's Ugrian, like the Ural. Ugrian? That sounds better. Ugrian peoples until around 500 BCE. When they began to migrate in a southwesterly direction toward the northern shore of the Caspian Sea, a landlocked body of water that lies north of Iran. The problem with this theory is that it does not explain what spurred the Magyars, who had been living in the forests with other Finno-Ugrian peoples as hunter-gatherers, to become nomadic herdsmen and then warriors. The whereabouts and actions of the Magyars until the early 9th century remain unexplained. Back to our pod's journey, the last lake. Many people regard the arrival of the Magyar people as the beginning of Hungarian history. Their arrival also marks the end of a remarkable 1,000-mile journey by an incredibly resilient people. In 830, the Magyars arrived at the plain off the western bank of the Don River in Russia and settled there until 889, when the invading Pechenegs, a neighboring tribe, forced the Magyars to the western fringes of the plain. During this time, Carolingian Emperor Arnulf offered the middle basin of the Danube to the Magyars in return for their help in defending its ailing empire. Around 896, Arpad, the leader of the Magyars, crossed the Carpathian Mountains into present-day Hungary. And There they go. Next we have Budapest. Nicknamed Paris of the East, Budapest offers spectacular views by day and by night. Formed in 1873 when three smaller towns, Buda, Pest, and Óbuda, were merged, Budapest is divided by the Danube, with the hilly regions of Buda to the river's west and the flatlands of Pest to the east. Approximately 2 million Hungarians live in the country's capital. In the past, Pest was destroyed by the Mongols in the 1200s, the Ottoman Turks in the 1500s, and both the Germans and the Soviets in the mid-20th century. Each setback has required decades of rebuilding. Today, Pest is the economic, political, and financial center of the city, as well as the site of several pre-20th century buildings. Buda is the more historically preserved half of the city. Cherished buildings include the Matthias Church and Buda Castle, which has been a World Heritage Site since 1987. Also on the Buda side, Clark Square commemorates Adam Clark, a Scot who built the first permanent bridge across the Danube. Made mostly of stone, Chain Bridge took 10 years to build and was designed by Englishman William Tierney Clark. Built in 1877, West Railway Station was a technical feat for its time. Constructed by the same people who built the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the station's hall and metal structures continue to fascinate thousands of visitors each year. The nation's love for fine arts. The Hungarian National Gallery exhibits the works of the country's most distinguished artists, some of which date back to the 10th century. Gothic artifacts such as wooden sculptures and altars are among the gallery's most treasured items. The Hungarian Museum of Fine Art, on the other hand, features works of art by international artists. The museum showcases modern sculptures and paintings, as well as historical items showing Greco-Roman and Egyptian influences. And next, we have coffee houses. Let me hold it like this. There we go. Coffee was first introduced to Hungary in the 16th century by the Ottoman Turks. Turkish coffee houses spread quickly throughout the area that is now Budapest long before any appeared in Paris or Vienna. The Hungarian coffee house, or kávéhouse, however, developed along the lines of Viennese coffee houses, and the cafe lifestyle in Hungary peaked in the final decades of the Habsburg Empire. Someone's dog is popping off right now. Oh well. Budapest had approximately 600 coffee houses at the end of the 19th century. For decades, the cafe house has been a meeting place for people from different ethnic backgrounds and social classes. Today, Hungarians gather at a cafe house mostly to relax or unwind over a quiet drink after work. Traditional coffee houses. The architecture of traditional Hungarian coffee houses is unusually grand, and their interiors are plush. Establishments such as New York, Művelés, and Győrbód in Budapest cater mainly to tourists, while new modern coffee houses are the preferred choice for younger Hungarians. Here's the big lavish one, so pretty. Traditional coffee houses initially served only coffee and tobacco, but this menu soon expanded to include hot chocolate, desserts, and alcohol. Espresszók are usually smaller than standard Hungarian coffee houses, and they also serve alcoholic drinks. Espresszók first appeared during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and many more opened throughout the 1960s. Budapest has the highest number of espresszók. Let's see. Cukrászdak are pastry shops that also serve coffee. Most cukrászdak are family businesses. New coffee houses. The development of Hungary's free market economy has led to a growing number of spacious designer cafes, such as the Odeon and Café Vian. These new establishments offer wider ranges of food and drinks than the traditional coffee houses, but are also a lot more expensive. Regulars at the new cafes are usually successful entrepreneurs, executives, or expatriates who are more likely to chat on their mobile telephones than discuss politics or art. And next was the Cowboys of Puszta. The Great Puszta, Hungary's vast grasslands of the Great Alfold, is home to, remember how to, Koshak. Okay. I'm sorry, how I learned to pronounce words, I just say it a million times until I get it right. So, Koshak. Or Hungarian Cowboys, who, despite the country's tumultuous past, have admirably kept their lifestyle and culture intact. Horses have long been a prominent part of Hungarian history and culture. In this picturesque region, large fields of paprika are dotted with modest white houses, and the people living here appear almost untouched by modernization or outside influences. Women still wear traditional embroidered dresses similar to those worn by their predecessors, and Chikosak manage herds of horses and cattle on the Puszta, using only traditional tools and methods. At an undefined point in Hungary's ancient history, the Magyar people, who were once hunter-gatherers, became herdsmen as well as warriors. A distinctive feature of the Magyar warriors was that they rode to war standing on the backs of their horses. There's a picture over here, we'll look at it in a minute. The equestrian skill of the Magyar warriors, however, was not institutionalized until the 1500s, when King Matthias I came to power. Check that out. And the Magyar men who possessed such fine horsemanship were given the name Huszár. Some experts claim that Huszár is a corruption of the Hungarian term for 20. This number is significant because King Matthias I built his formidable cavalry by summoning one male member from every 20th house and settlements throughout Hungary to be schooled in traditional Magyar equestrian finesse. Consequently, the term Huszár came to represent these legendary Magyar horsemen. Later, the English word hussar was used to describe 15th century light cavalry. So this is the Puszta 5, or 5 in hand. Today, the Puszta 5, or the 5 in hand, is possibly the most famous trick performed by Csíkosak. For this equestrian feat, 5 horses, 3 in the front and 2 in the back, have to run in harmony. The horseman stands on the backs of 2 horses while holding the reins to all 5 horses. Csíkosak are not only able to ride at swift speeds in this fashion, but can also guide all 5 horses without losing their balance. That's really incredible. What a feat. It's St. Stephen. The crown of Stephen I, which is right here. 2 crowns in one. A national treasure and relic, the Hungarian Holy Crown is actually made of 2 separate crowns. Shaped like a helmet, the upper part of the crown was originally a gift from Pope Sylvester II to Stephen I, when the latter became King of Hungary in 1000. Made of solid gold, the upper part of the crown has Latin inscriptions and is decorated with pearls, jewels, and intricate enamel designs. 3 gold chains extend from the rim of the crown with jewels attached to each end. The design of the lower part of the crown is characteristic of Byzantine or Eastern Roman crowns. The lower part of the crown, which has Greek inscriptions, was made in Constantinople, which is present-day Istanbul, the capital of Eastern Rome, and was a gift from Byzantine Emperor Michael VII to Hungarian King Giza I in the 11th century. The 2 crowns are combined into one royal crown in the 12th century. The long chase. According to researchers at Mississippi State University, the Hungarian Holy Crown is the only existing national relic in the world to have such a colorful past. Hungarians throughout history have subjected the crown to some fantastic adventures to prevent it from falling into foreign hands. King Bela IV transferred the crown to the fortress of Klisa in present-day Croatia in 1241 to safeguard it from the invading Mongols. King Matyas I brought the crown back to Hungarian soil in 1463, but it was hidden again when the Ottoman Turks invaded in 1526. I remember how to say his name. It was Lajos Kossuth. Lajos Kossuth hid the crown in an iron chest. I'm really trying. I apologize. Hid the crown in an iron chest which he buried underground near Orsova in present-day Romania after the country surrendered to the Habsburgs in 1849. By 1945, the Hungarian crown was in the hands of the U.S. Army. The crown was kept in Fort Knox, Kentucky until January 5, 1978, when U.S. Secretary of State Cyrus Vance returned it to the Hungarian government. Today, the Hungarian Holy Crown is under the care of the Hungarian Parliament. You know what I've wondered about this crown that I didn't bother to research, but none of my books that I got mentioned it. Why is the little crown crooked on top? Like, what happened to it? Was it meant to be that way? I don't know. But it's very distinctive, right? It's like they're a big symbol of Hungary. It's very important. Let's learn about the Chardash, right? Chardash, the national dance. Nicknamed the Tango of the East, the Chardash is Hungary's national dance. A lively, fast-paced dance, the dance steps of the Chardash were inspired by Hungarian folk dances, while the accompanying music drew heavily from the musical styles of the Roma people. The earliest form of the Chardash probably appeared in the 16th and 17th centuries, when the country came under Ottoman rule and was introduced to the lively songs and dances of the Indian-influenced Roma people. Early versions of the Chardash, however, were largely left undeveloped until the 19th century. Count Stephen Széchenyi, I think that's how you say that. I tried to look it up. Széchenyi. Count Stephen Széchenyi is regarded by many as the founding father of Hungary's national dance. During a ball held in the National Casino in 1839, Count Széchenyi was dismayed by the fact that the night's entertainment did not include a uniquely Hungarian dance. He urged Hungarians at the ball to perform a Hungarian dance, but no one knew how. Baron George Orsi, a landowner from Gyongos, and his sister, Baroness Elise Orsi, finally came to the rescue with the dance that they had seen the villagers of Gyongos perform. I'm sure that's not how you say that at all. Again, please correct me if you know. By 1840, Hungarian folk dancing was gaining popularity, partly because of the enthusiasm showed by members of the social elite, such as Count Stephen Széchenyi and Louis Forgash, and Barons Stephen Orsi and Béla Wenkheim. In fact, it was Wenkheim who named the new Hungarian social dance the Chardash. His rationale was that it resembled the dances performed in the Charda, or village inn, by peasant girls on Sundays. Since then, the Chardash has been well received throughout the country by Hungarians from diverse social backgrounds. The upper classes welcomed the Chardash because it gave them a sense of nationalistic pride. The common people were proud that the nobility appreciated and were willing to adopt a truly native Hungarian dance. The Hungarian round dance is the second most popular dance in Hungary after the Chardash. And next we have, make sure I'm not skipping pages, the Danube. Flowing through more than 8 countries, including Austria, Germany, Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, and the former Yugoslavia, the Danube River is Europe's second longest river. The Danube, however, is suffering from an ecological crisis. The river once had crystal clear waters and provided Hungarians with a source of food. Today, its waters are cloudy and polluted from the indiscriminate actions of large corporations. Between 1999 and 2000, the Danube contained dangerously high levels of cyanide after a Romanian gold mine accidentally leaked large volumes of the lethal chemical into the river's water. The cyanide polluted both the Danube and the Tisza, and fishermen reportedly had to remove tons worth of dead fish from the river's surface and shores. For a long time, the Samos, one of the Tisza's tributaries, smelled faintly of almonds, a sign of cyanide contamination. Yuck, it's really sad. Such a beautiful, very important river. Tests conducted by the World Health Organization after the cyanide crisis show that the Danube's waters also contain significant levels of other dangerous chemicals, such as cadmium and lead. Such extensive pollution raises a number of environmental problems, including endangering the wildlife that lives in and near the river, compromising the quality of farmlands once nourished by the river, and depriving thousands of people of clean, fresh water. Countries that were severely affected by the cyanide crisis, namely Romania, Hungary, and Serbia, have since come together to organize and implement major environmental cleanup programs. The Worldwide Fund for Nature. Hungarian waters are home to 29 species of protected fish, 19 of which reside in the Tisza River. Several protected species of fish are facing grim and uncertain futures. Since the cyanide crisis, however, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF, has volunteered to defend the Tisza's natural environment against further pollution and damage. Next, we have Esterhazy, Hungarian royalty. Let me prop this up like this. Hungarians have mixed feelings about the Esterhazy family. Beginning with Miklós Esterhazy, an army officer, the Esterhazy family grew in wealth and power by supporting the Austrians in the oppression of Hungarians in the 17th and 18th centuries. Hungarians resent the fact that the Esterhazy family sided with the Austrians, but they also appreciate the significant contributions the family has made to Hungary's cultural life and fine arts. Paul, Miklós's son, was the first in the family to join the nobility. Paul was given the title of prince after he successfully crushed a nationwide uprising in Hungary, and since then the title has passed from one generation to the next. The Esterhazy Castle. Commissioned by Prince Joseph, construction of the Esterhazy Castle, or Esterháza, began in 1720. Located in Fertut in northwestern Hungary, the castle reached the height of its opulent glory between 1768 and 1790. Empress Maria Theresa visited the Esterhazy Castle in 1773. I might do a video on her one day because she was kind of a baddie in an interesting way. She was a lot. In 1681, Paul Esterhazy purchased many valuable works of art that had earlier been confiscated by the Austrian government. The Esterhazy collection of paintings and art treasures ultimately became the basis for the Budapest Museum of Fine Arts. Esterháza was also where the first two theaters in Hungary were built. Prince Miklós, Paul's son, was a fervent patron of the arts. He invited Franz Joseph Haydn to Esterháza in 1762. Haydn stayed on as the in-house composer for over 30 years, composing and performing much of his life's work in Esterhazy Castle. In the mid-1950s, efforts were made to restore the castle, which had fallen into disrepair. Supervised by Professor Jenő Rados, the Fertut Building Cooperative was responsible for the castle's accurate and detailed restoration. Today, the castle receives over 60,000 visitors every year. From June to September each year, classical music concerts are held in Esterháza's ceremonial hall. Distinguished local and foreign musicians play alongside symphonic and chamber orchestras. Staged by the Hungarian Baroque Entertainments, performances of classic operas and plays have also been revived at Esterhazy. That would be a really cool experience. It's awesome. Also, I think this would be even cooler, the Festival of Mohach. As tall men wearing sheepskin coats and horned wooden masks dance around a bonfire and fire noisy cannons, first-time spectators may think they are witnessing a religious ritual rather than a carnival. With many conflicting stories and legends, the exact origin of the Festival of Mohach, held at the end of February, is uncertain. Situated along the Danube, Mohach is a remote village in southern Hungary. According to the most popular explanation, the aim of the festival is to frighten and chase away both the winter and evil spirits, which is why the men dress to look especially scary. Throughout the festival, villagers visit one another's homes in costumes and make a lot of noise wherever they go, using their voices, horns, or cattle bells. At the end of the festival, a straw effigy of the winter demon is set on fire, symbolizing the death of winter. Another popular story says that the festival is a commemoration of a particular battle against the invading Ottoman Turks in the 16th century. Legend has it that the Turks were repeatedly unable to conquer a swampy area near Mohach because the villagers used a secret pathway that led them to safety whenever they were attacked. The Turks ultimately found the secret path and were advancing toward the area when the villagers, who did not have weapons, put on frightening costumes and masks and created a din with rattles and horns to scare away the superstitious Turks. The villagers' ploy worked so well that the Turkish soldiers dropped their weapons as they fled. Today, the festival is celebrated in the form of a procession performed by 3 distinct groups. The first group consists of people who wear grotesque wooden masks, fur coats that have been turned inside out, and white trousers stuffed with straw. They also carry rattles and horns. Members of the second group wear fancy dresses but do not have masks. The third group consists of people who have covered their faces with ashes. I love those kind of old-timey traditions where, like, the origins are lost and people just do them anyway. Freedom fighters, leading up to that fateful day. Backed by the then mighty Soviet Union, Mátyás Chardash became Hungary's prime minister in 1952. Soviet strength, however, weakened after Stalin's death in 1953, and several Eastern European nations, including Poland and the former Yugoslavia, took the opportunity to revolt against their communist oppressors. In July 1953, the Hungarian government replaced Rákosi with Imre Nagy, who lost no time in implementing reforms that steered Hungary's economy away from the Soviet model. The Moscow government eventually sacked Nagy in 1955 and reinstated Rákosi. By July 1956, however, Rákosi was dismissed by newly elected Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, who appointed Ierno Gyro, Rákosi's former deputy, as Prime Minister of Communist Hungary. In October 23rd, 1956. On October 23rd, 1956, a group of students marched through the streets of Budapest protesting Hungary's communist regime. The students presented a petition to the government in which they demanded a formal acknowledgement of all the injustices the country and its people have endured since the government had become communist. The students were soon joined by civilians who filled the streets to support their cause. Ierno Gyro responded with a condescending speech and later ordered the police to fire into the crowds. Incensed by these senseless shootings, Hungarians throughout the country united in an attempt to overthrow the communist government. The Hungarian army not only joined the revolution, they even supplied the revolutionaries with weapons and ammunition. Prisoners who had been detained under communist laws were released, and Imre Nagy, a patriot well loved by Hungarians, resumed his position as prime minister. Hungary's liberalization lasted for all of 12 days. On November 4th, Soviet troops swept into the country to suppress the uprising. János Kádár was then installed as prime minister. Hungarian physicists, starting with Leo Szilard. Born in Budapest, Leo Szilard studied engineering at the Budapest Institute of Technology. A gifted student, he earned a doctorate in physics from the University of Berlin in 1922. In March 1933, Szilard moved to England, where he first worked on the concept of a neutron chain reaction. This theory later became the founding principle of nuclear energy and also led to the development of the hydrogen or atomic bomb. He continued his research in the United States, but was deeply saddened by the use of his work in warfare, despite his constant pleas to the government as well as the scientific community. In 1947, Szilard turned to biological research, which led him to invent the chemostat, an apparatus that is able to continuously produce bacteria under controlled conditions. That's interesting. Between 1959 and 1960, Szilard developed radiation therapy to combat cancer. Next is Edward Teller. Also known as the father of the atomic bomb, Edward Teller was born in Budapest. Teller was a mathematical genius, but his interest in physics drove him to study nuclear energy. Teller, like Szilard, moved to the United States during World War II and was subsequently enlisted to assist in the Manhattan Project, a division of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers established in 1942 to produce the atomic bomb. And John von Neumann. John von Neumann made landmark discoveries in quantum physics, logic, and computer science. He studied chemistry at the University of Berlin and received a doctorate in mathematics from the University of Budapest. In 1930, he published The Mathematical Foundations of Quantum Mechanics, the most comprehensive book on the subject to this day. Neumann was a consultant to the U.S. Defense Forces during World War II, when he aided in the development of the atomic bomb by devising the implosion method, which causes nuclear fuel to explode. Next we have Hungarian porcelain. The intricate detailing and exquisite craftsmanship that goes into the production of Hungarian porcelain justifies its good reputation around the world. Herend, Zsolnay, and Holoháza are Hungary's three most famous porcelain-producing regions. First is Herend. The Herend porcelain manufactory is probably Hungary's oldest and most famous producer of fine china. Founded in 1826 by Vince Stingel, the factory is located in the small town of Herend, a short distance southwest of Budapest. In the 19th century, the factory catered mainly to the tastes of European aristocrats and nobility, producing elaborate dinner sets and complex display pieces. Stingel's products were of such high quality that by the 1850s, Herend porcelain was already being featured in world-class exhibitions held in major cities such as New York and Paris. Very pretty. Zsolnay. The history of Zsolnay porcelain dates back over 2,000 years. The porcelain is produced in Pécs, a town in southern Hungary blessed with a pleasant Mediterranean climate. Zsolnay porcelain gained worldwide recognition in the 1878 Paris World Expo for fine china. Today, the finer works of Zsolnay can be seen at the Zsolnay Ceramics Museum. And Holoháza. Surrounded by woodlands, Holoháza is a remote village in the northernmost part of Hungary that became famous because of its porcelain factory. In its first 10 years of production, the factory manufactured mainly ceramic tableware for everyday use. In 1954, the factory started to make porcelain, and since then has manufactured only porcelain goods. In the 1980s, Andrei Száz, a famous Hungarian artist, became Holoháza's main designer. He made considerable changes to the design of its porcelain products. Next is the tragedy of Trianon. The Tragedy of Trianon. Hungary after June 4th, 1920. Many modern Hungarians are still suffering from the effects of the Treaty of Trianon, signed at the Trianon Palace at Versailles, France. At the end of World War I, the victorious countries came together to draft the demands of the treaty. Hungary was forced to give up almost 72% of the country's land area, which rendered nearly 64% of Hungary's population subjects of other countries overnight. When the Hungarian population was reduced from 18 million to 8 million, the country also lost approximately one-third of its Hungarian-speaking population. The implications of Hungary's post-treaty boundaries further devastated the country by making it virtually inaccessible. Almost 74% of the country's roads, nearly 65% of its navigable waterways, and 62% of its railway tracks became controlled by neighboring countries. Most of the country's lucrative natural resources, including large reserves of salt, silver, coal, and iron, were also lost after the treaty was enforced. I don't have a speech impediment, but if there's a word with lots of R's and W's, it's impossible for me. I have to be very careful. Displaced Hungarians. As of June 4th, 1920, millions of Hungarians suddenly became immigrants, even though they had not moved an inch. Today, as many as 5 million Hungarians proudly declare their ethnicity, even though they live in other countries. Sizable Hungarian populations, ranging from 5,000 in the Netherlands to 2 million in Romania, exist in over 20 countries, including Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Czech Republic, France, Germany, Israel, Italy, Slovakia, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Uruguay. The first generation of Hungarians to adopt new nationalities was generally subjected to harsh laws that sought to limit, if not eliminate altogether, many basic human rights. The plight of displaced Hungarians has improved over the years, if only slightly in some countries. Slovakia, which was previously northern Hungary, still bans the use of the Hungarian language in official places. The Hungarian national anthem is also illegal unless it is played to welcome an official Hungarian delegation that has been invited by the Slovakian government. In Romania, discrimination against ethnic Hungarians is widespread, especially in Transylvania, which was once part of Hungary. Next we have waters that heal. I love water slides and water parks, and when I was researching Hungary, I saw some of the most spectacular looking water parks. Oh, it made me want to go so bad. Anyway, natural or man-made pools of warm Hungarian mineral water attract thousands of visitors to the country each year. Many people claim that soaking in these waters miraculously cures nagging ailments and illnesses. Hungarian spas and thermal springs are filled with water drawn from a variety of natural sources that possess different mineral compositions and temperatures. Each type of Hungarian mineral water is reputedly unique and treats only one specific ailment or illness. For example, the water of Hajduszó-Bosó is characteristically recommended for swift post-surgical healing. Dissenting experts, however, argue that Hungary's large reserves of warm mineral waters were used to heat homes and were not used for healing purposes in the past. Compared to the rest of the country, Budapest has the highest number of diverse mineral water pools. That looks so nice. It's all naturally heated and everything. Awesome. Heves. Heves, Europe's largest natural thermal spring, is situated in a valley northwest of Lake Balaton. The waters of Heves are slightly radioactive and appear blackish because of the mud that lines the bottom of the spring. Numerous lily pads float on Heves's surface. The earliest known record of Heves's curative properties dates back to 1730. And famous spas in Budapest. Gellert Spa and its accompanying hotel in Budapest's Esterhazy district are one of the city's major landmarks. The spa uses water that is rich in calcium and magnesium hydrocarbonates, sulfur, and chloride. Chardash Spa in the Dobrente district was built in 1460 and uses water that is slightly radioactive and contains large amounts of calcium and magnesium hydrocarbonates, sulfur, and fluoride. Drawing water from the same sources is Rach Spa in the Hungary district, which was once connected to the royal castle in the 16th century. Again, trying my best here. And lastly, tonight we have the wines of Hungary. Hungarian wines come in many types, including Essencia, Azu, and Samrodni. I hope that's how you say that. These wines are mainly produced in 17 regions throughout the country, centered around towns such as Tokaj, Eger, Sopron, Tapuka, Balatonfurt, and Nyíregyháza. I'm sure I ruined all of those. I apologize. Famous wine-producing regions, doing my very best. A hilly region in northeastern Hungary, Tokaj has been producing prized Hungarian wines such as Tokaj Azu and Tokaj Ferment since the 5th century. Wine experts from around the world tend to classify Tokaj Azu as an aperitif, or a pre-meal wine that helps to whet the drinker's appetite. The old city of Eger lies between the Matra Mountains and the northern reaches of the Ties River. The city is mostly known for its many Baroque buildings, but it also has a tradition of producing fine wines, such as Bicaver, Egri Leonica, and Egri Medoc Noir. The most favored of Eger wines, Bicaver, which means bull's blood, was so named because of its rich red color. I also don't know anything about wine because I don't drink alcohol, so I don't know anything about wine or Hungarian wine. But it sounds like, listen to this, making Azu and Essencia. Grapes cultivated for the production of Azu wine are left on the vine until they are attacked by fungus and shrivel into flavorful raisins. This technique is called the noble rot. The harvested raisins are mixed with fresh grapes inside large casks. Then young village girls stomp on the mixture with bare feet until its consistency resembles that of dough. The thickened mixture is transferred to a clean container where must, or grape juice, is added. Left to settle for several hours, the diluted mixture is then reduced to a liquid, which is portioned into barrels. The new wine is then left to ferment for several years. I'm sure that's exquisite, right? It's so detailed. And I'm sure the tradition is ancient, right? The same type of grapes used to produce Azu wine are also used to make Essencia wine, and they are also subjected to the noble rot. Unlike Azu, however, the harvested raisins are packed into special vats that each have a tiny hole at the bottom. The sheer weight of the raisins creates enough pressure to squeeze the juices out of the raisins. Drop by drop, the juices are painstakingly collected in a basin positioned underneath the tiny hole. The collected liquid is then bottled and stored for a minimum of 25 years. So detailed. And that's going to be the end of it for tonight. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good